What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Code. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Fix from Physio Room. And today we're joined by Kristin Jones. So Kristin is a sports performance specialist at Elite Speed here in Denver, Colorado. And then she also owns her own remote coaching online fitness business called Fit and Fuel. Kristin, thank you so much for coming in here to Physio Room and joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good to be here. Love your facility.
Yeah, thanks. We're fortunate in this office. Inside of, we've had Tristan Mitchell, the owner of Lions Den Strength, Mobility, and Performance, on here several episodes back. But this facility is amazing. I mean, it's in a basement, which is very fitting for the name Lions Den.
Yes.
But like the space that we have is so cool, and the coaches we get to spend time with. So yeah, we love it too.
Yes, it definitely has a good vibe going.
Yeah, thanks. Well, what I would love to do is just have you, kind of like share your background. I know you're heavily involved in fitness, both coaching and personally. You've had your own, injury stories and all this, but I would love for you just to share a bit of your background and see where that takes us in the conversation.
Okay, sounds good. So, so I've been very involved in sports my entire life. Grew up here in Colorado, went to high school here locally, but played sports growing up, soccer and tennis, and a little bit of everything. Grew up skiing. As a young kid, so very active family. Went on to play college tennis. So at the University of Oklahoma, got a scholarship to play Division I college tennis. So had that experience.
Awesome.
Very grateful for that. It was just really, challenging, but a lot of fun and really neat experience and culture. A huge, sports school. So had that experience. So kind of have always been very involved in sports and fitness, but, post college, I got like a normal job and I've worked in marketing, did the business thing, corporate marketing, worked for Starbucks, went out to Seattle and did a bunch of work out there. So kind of had the typical corporate job, and it was very different from what I did, with sports, and always stayed involved. I was always interested in fitness and kind of took that to just recreational level and did marathons and triathlons, and kind of always stayed active.
Yeah.
So I've always been very active. I'm married, I have 3 kids. They're all very involved in sports. So that's always been a big part of our lives. So
How old are your 3 kids?
So I've got 15, 13 and 10.
Yeah, it's always a quiz, right? When someone's puts you on the spot.
Don't ask me their birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Someone asked me that. I don't have children yet, but we do have 2 awesome Maine Coon cats.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's crazy to think they're almost 6 years old now.
Wow.
Someone asked me the other day, and I had to count back on the calendar in my head, how old are they? I married into having those cats. Is basically what happened, but they're wonderful.
So now you need a dog to add to the mix.
Yeah.
Stir things up a little bit.
That's the thing. We have our first house, my wife, Erin, and I, and we own a townhome. So we don't have a yard. And that's the only thing that's really holding us back from getting a dog. My wife does do some traveling for work at this time. So, between her traveling and my hours and the no yard part, we're maybe we should wait to get the dog. We do really want a dog though.
Yes.
We both would love that.
Yes.
Well, I want to touch on a little bit of, you said you were fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go play college tennis. Was that the first, sport or fitness related thing that you kind of got into as a kid? Or how did you get into playing tennis?
To tennis. Yeah. So I started did a little bit of everything as a kid, parents put you in all the things, the summer activities, tennis, in the summer, we did swim team, a little bit of everything. And I always enjoyed competing and I always enjoyed sports. I asked my dad recently, this question, when did you know that I was really, good, or even just mentally tough? And he's like, about the age of 9 or 10 is when you really cared. You really wanted to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I really see that in a lot of athletes we work with, because, from age 9 or 10, all the way up through high school and then on to college. But really that age is when they really kind of click for them, where they really care. And because some kids are very naturally competitive. I was one of those as well. You probably were too.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Still am.
Yeah. It kind of sticks with you.
I'm still very much a competitive kid.
Right. Just always kid at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how I got into it. And then, I just started doing well where I was. I started doing really well in the neighborhood tennis, and I started doing really well at the state level, and then really well at the national level. And it's just little steps like that.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I tell parents who are like, I want my kid to play in college. I'm like, well, how are they doing where they're at? Like, are they winning? Are they excelling there? Like, focus there. And when you're like, you're really competing there, then move on to the next level. Like, have that strategic goal, but like, win where you're at, do your best there.
Yeah, exactly. And, back to that competitive piece, like how I got into sports initially when my parents signed me up for like youth softball, t-ball, and then football. Organized tackle football was the first thing that I played. I was just like throwing the ball basically to myself because I have two younger siblings that I grew up with in the house. But I was basically like throwing the ball to myself, the football in the backyard. I would throw the ball. It would bounce off the roof of our shed in their backyard. And then I would like go dive and catch it in the backyard type thing.
Totally.
And, occasionally a ball would go over the fence or something that I would throw or hit or whatever. And that's kind of how, through my mother talking to a friend at work, that's how I got signed up for football, is because she said something about, Andrew's always, we're playing catch and then he like throws the ball too hard and it goes over the fence. And her coworker was like, well, I'm starting a youth football team and we could use a quarterback. Sounds like he has a good arm. That's how I got into football.
I love it.
And then, the rest is history. But I've been pretty competitive, just like you said. And then, I think since I've been done playing like organized sports in college and stuff, I've probably tried to dial back the competitiveness just a little bit so that I could feel, I don't know, like not as upset or not as like irritated if I didn't perform as well as I wanted to.
That's a tough one.
Because I used to get really mad if, I didn't do something as well as I was expecting or hoping to. It used to really tear me up. So
that's definitely like a double-edged sword, right? The competitiveness and really wanting to be and perform well, and then not being too hard on yourself.
Yep.
And taking the joy out of the sport. Mm-hmm. You see that happen a lot. So
yeah, exactly. And so it sounds like that didn't happen to you. I see that happen a lot of times to kids as they're growing up. They're like so focused on their particular sport. And it starts to almost feel like a job, and some of the like enjoyment and true just like happiness of it kind of goes away, and it starts to feel more like work than it does, like play.
Right. Absolutely. And that's a really good point. And that's why I always encourage like kids to play lots of sports, and really up until high school, I played everything, and even through college, I still have stayed involved in many things, not only because our body needs to, as it's growing, we don't want that pattern overload, the same throw and the same forehand, like we need to do other sports and move our bodies in different ways, but also just for that level of burnout, where you're right, where you see, and I always tell parents, I'm like, or kids, don't ever lose the love of the game. Like when you start losing the love of the game, like take a step back, like reevaluate what you're doing, your training schedule, like what do we, and really it comes down to like quality training and practice over quantity, like really put your all into that hour, that day. And maybe you don't need to train every day for 6 hours, like really put your full effort into that time. I find that is probably true for all of us, like in our training.
Yeah. I think, I've heard, you hear that phrase out there, like practice makes perfect type of thing. I don't necessarily believe that, because if you're practicing and you're just going through the motions, not really being intentional, and you're just kind of there, just, punching the time clock type of thing, or just checking boxes like, yep, I practiced today, but you weren't really like, fully invested in that training session. It's probably not as helpful as it could be. Like you just said, you could probably train less, be more intentional while you're doing it, and you probably get more out of it.
Yeah, no, that's true. That reminds me, I listened to a podcast, Kurt Warner.
I do know Kurt Warner. Yep.
So what a great story, right? Like the underdog. There's a movie out, but I have not seen it yet. I need to.
In correction, when I say I know Kurt Warner, I don't know him personally. I know who Kurt Warner is, and watched a lot of football of him growing up.
So it's such a cool story, and like we all love the story of the underdog, right? But his whole story, and I can't remember the exact details, but I think he sat the bench in college, and not even like a Notre Dame college, like Iowa or a smaller college.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I remember he said in this interview that, he asked his coach finally, or maybe he had somebody, a teammate, ask the coach, why am I not playing? Like, I'm better than these guys who are playing. And the coach responded, like, you're not practicing well. Like, you're not playing well in practice.
Yeah.
Like, and that was like, he was like, I need to perform at a high level of intensity and mentally and physically in practice to prove myself. Like
Yep.
they can't just think I'm great and they put me in there. Like I got to prove it in practice. And I tell the kids, we train that all the time. I'm like, this practice is practice for your performance. Like if you're not here focused and putting your full effort into this mentally and physically, like you're not going to perform well.
Yeah.
So that's just like an interesting point about how we can overdo, but going through the motions instead of intent. So
yeah, exactly. Intent is so important. Well, I would like to dive into like what you're doing right now, either at Elite Speed and Fit and Fuel. Like you said, you went out to Seattle, you were doing corporate marketing stuff with Starbucks, but like, how did you get into fitness and like health and wellness as a career path? Like how did that journey start for you?
So that's a great question. And it's a very specific time frame. We all have our COVID stories, right? We all have our like, some people like, I got the dog, we got the trampoline, like we have whatever. So my story, so I had, the corporate career and obviously still stayed involved in athletics, recreation, still trained and all of that, but it was not, and I never actually thought I would make a career out of health and fitness. And this is why, and I think that we align on this, is that I always thought it was like this transactional thing. Like, I'm a trainer, here's a workout, or I'm a nutritionist, here's a meal plan, see you next Tuesday, good luck,
Yeah, sure.
And like, for me, I'm like so much more relational than that. And I really, and I know you guys operate the same way. Like, it's not just where we're going in and for an hour, you're seeing somebody and see you next time and good luck. It's just, there's so much more to it than that. So backing up to COVID, this crazy time when, everything's shutting down, we're all like, what is going on? I had a broken foot at the time. So I was in a boot and all the gyms shut down. So we're all us fitness people were like, wow, what do we do? So I set up a little workout area in my backyard with like a couple dumbbells and stacked some bricks from the backyard, just like total, prison yard gym.
Make do with what you've got.
That, right?
Yeah.
Adapt. We learned to adapt. But anyway, I kind of got involved a little in a like online challenge, fitness challenge. And I sort of got into this and really took a leadership role in this time. And really there was this thing going on with parents, and we were homeschooling our kids at the time. It was everything shut down. It was crazy. And it seemed like this narrative out there for women anyway, was like, you know what, this is really hard for us. Like, just take it easy, like drink a bunch of wine and watch the Tiger King and just like check out. And I was like, nothing against I mean, I know people, if you like that show, it's fine. But I was just like, I didn't feel like that was like that was going to be my story, that it was like, we're just going to check out during this time. And so I felt like called up to something more. And so honestly, like all of our kids' sports were canceled. Literally, this was a huge moment. I walked to the park with my kids and there was yellow tape around the slides, around the swings, caution tape. And I was like, I got to do something about this. So I started this training kids in my backyard. I started getting my own kids and whoever was available. And we would meet Wednesday mornings because I think they were homeschooled and we had all this time, right? And we would train in my backyard and kind of around the park. And I just pulled cones and stuff. And I knew fitness and I knew, sports, and we started training and it grew and grew and grew. And so all of a sudden I had triple the amount of kids, and we met consistently every week through COVID. And I was like, I love this. And kind of at the same time, I started connecting with people in the online coaching, remote coaching area, and realizing that like I have a lot of skills from my sports experience that I have to offer that can help people, and this is a time when people are struggling big time, mentally, physically. We are overwhelmed. Like there's a lot of mental health issues. Our kids aren't able to be active. So anyway, it kind of all started in that time. So that's my story. And so kind of using all my background for this moment of time when I felt really called to start to do something about what was happening. So that's how it started.
I love it. It sounds like one of those, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade type of situations where obviously all of us were kind of blindsided by COVID. And I remember my wife and I were living in the area right around Kansas City when it started. And then we moved here to Denver in the end of May, like Memorial Day time. So like coming up on 2 years that we've been here in the Denver area. But I remember going on some walks and seeing the same thing as you. Like we're walking past this park, there's signs up that say like, no, you can't use the park. There's, caution tape and all this stuff. And it just frustrated the heck out of me because one, we're outside. And, when everybody was being told, not to congregate indoors and all this stuff, like, okay, so where's more safe to be than outside where there's fresh air and the breeze blowing and all this stuff. And I know the benefits of movement and physical activity from a mental health perspective.
Yes.
And I was like, well, you're taking away something that could help people in a time where they're already struggling.
Yes.
We're not able to communicate and have like interaction with each other. And then you can't even like go to the park and hang out like outdoors when you're spaced far away from each other. And what are kids supposed to do? What are parents supposed to do? So yeah, I think that's awesome that you were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? We're going to start training in the backyard and invite people who want to come. And it sounds like if you build it, they will come.
Yes,
type of situation.
That's exactly what, and I didn't have like a plan. I was just like, this feels like the right thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like our kids need to move and they're trapped in front of a computer watching Zoom classes all day. Like they need to move and get outside. So it just kind of happened very organically that way. And that grew. So I kind of had this training, this youth, I called it Wednesday morning youth training. That was the name of it. And then I built Fit and Fuel. And kind of within that was this remote coaching I was doing because people were not able to connect. We weren't able to go to gyms. We weren't able to. So I was able to reach people through social media and through this remote, lots of videos. I got very comfortable doing videos and then my youth training. So it kind of all became Fit and Fuel. And that kind of is, fitness, nutrition kind of all in one. So this all happened during that time. And I kind of feel like this is new for me, but also I've been doing this my whole life. This has like all been building up to this, So, and then 6 months or a year later, I got hired on with Elite Speed, which was awesome and feel very blessed and grateful to be there because I'm surrounded by a really amazing group of trainers and very intelligent people in the world of sports performance and physical therapy and all of that. So,
and like you said about the, comfort of doing videos and just trying to provide knowledge and information that you have to other people to try and be helpful. If you guys, you'll find it in the show notes and whatnot. We'll talk about it later, but check out Kristin on social media and you'll find so much stuff that she is constantly out there trying to provide a good example or set the example, leading by example for the people that she's working with. And you'll see that very clearly on her content. But okay, so being new to Colorado, because of the field that I'm in, I have an understanding generally of what Elite Speed is, but maybe everybody listening to this doesn't know what Elite Speed is. So would you tell us about that? You started there several months ago. And what do you guys do at Elite Speed and how has your time there been and evolved since you started?
Yeah, great question. So I have known, just being involved in sports, I've known about Elite Speed and sports performance. We did not have access to that type of training. Did you have anything like that growing up as an athlete?
No. And, we were talking with on another one of these episodes that's as of the recording of this already live with a youth running coach, Simon Escorcia. And we talked about how I think the average fitness level of the average kid, teenager, or whatever now is probably less than it was when I was growing up because of what you said. We were talking about Zoom classes, but we're sitting around on phones and computers and iPads and stuff so much that I think the average activity level for people has probably dropped. But the top end activity level and talent level and skill and all this stuff is probably higher because of the things that are available and access. I didn't know people that were working with, personal trainers and specialized coaches. I wasn't working with a quarterback coach outside of my normal, football team that I was on type of thing. So no, to answer your question. And honestly, even if that stuff was available, maybe it was, I don't think we probably were in maybe a financial situation or whatever for me to even do that anyways. But no, I don't think that stuff was nearly as readily available as it is today.
Yeah. Same with me. So warm up for us was running 2 laps around the tennis court and then the static quad stretch, right? That was okay, now let's go play and run around. So Elite Speed. So when I first started, I actually spent a couple of weeks just sort of shadowing and spending time or at the facility, watching the trainers, asking them a million questions. I've become a good trained observer. I ask a lot of questions, and I love to learn. So one of the first things I noticed was the interaction between the trainers and the athletes, and it being very relational, and them taking ownership, having kids take ownership of their training. So I would see trainers or performance specialists saying, hey, Lillian, what block are we in? And she would say, oh, we're in power block. Like what period, and they would ask them what weight do you do on trap bar deadlift? And she would say 135, they need to take ownership of that. So I noticed that first of all, and I thought that was very important, because I think it's important for people, especially youth athletes, to take ownership of their training and their performance in their entire career of athletics. So, and then just like enjoyment of training. So there's two things that, I think are important. One, they need to enjoy training for what they're doing. That's going to get enjoying it for the moment of that they're in for that specific performance goal, but also for life, so that they can be a mom and beyond in their entire life and be comfortable in a gym, enjoy it and have that, be part of their lifestyle, and then get results. Right. I mean, everybody trains hard to get results. So if they're coming there to improve their softball game and their speed and acceleration, they should be, we should be programming them to get there. And we're not just running them around. We're not just like, let's just wear them out. Like what's the plan for that? So, and I know that's a really big thing for you, you all as well, like having a plan.
You've got to have a plan, because so many people, and I still see this in society and in community, so many people think that, in order to have a quality workout or quality exercise, you just have to like breathe really heavy and sweat a lot. And that means that you've had a great workout. And that's not necessarily the case at all, right? Like you could have a phenomenal workout, minimally raising your heart rate, minimally sweating. It could be an amazing workout. It just depends what the plan is and like, what are you training for type of thing. So you're totally right.
So I would see, so the second thing I saw was, that level of mentorship and ownership, and then specific exercises. So they would be doing, putting a towel on an athlete's head and moving it so that they can get neck muscle control so that they prevent concussions. That is purposeful work. That's not just running around and then, the Cherry Creek High School football player gets a concussion that weekend. Like that. That's not so very sport specific exercise, but kind of moving back a little bit was, I have been learning so much about movement, and I know that's big for you guys, but we are a very movement based, sports performance company organization. So we teach kids how to move, like how to start moving on their, with A skips and pogos and things where they just know how to move and control their body. And literally you cannot play sports without the foundation of movement. And that's big for us, is just foundation, and I know you all believe the same thing. Is like, if you're trying to get to this certain level or this goal, but you do not have, you have a poor foundation, you will never get there. Or you will get hurt on the way. So foundation of movement, lots of skips and lateral movement, linear. So we do a lot of speed and acceleration. That's really big for us, all starting from movement, speed and acceleration, change of direction, and decel. And that's really big for injury prevention. So not only are we training them for their sport, but we are training them so they can train hard, but also properly, and good biomechanics. And that is foundational.
And I want to dive into that. I'm going to pause this really quick. We will be right back. All right. Thanks, guys. So Kristin, you're totally right with this concept of like, if you want to perform at a high level, you want youth athletes or whoever it is to perform and be really good, you've got to start with a really solid foundation. And that's something that we are really passionate about. I know that's something the gym that we're in is really passionate about. And I hear the coaches out here say in their owner, like, we need to help you master the basics. And if we can make you a better mover and get you better at doing basic human movements, squatting, hinging, deadlifts, like all this stuff, we can make you a better mover. We can typically translate that into, you're going to become a better athlete because you're just better at moving and better at performing. And that will translate to literally Practically everything.
Everything.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And especially for the younger athletes, just getting, starting with good body control,
Yeah.
when they're, when they're at a younger age, their arms are all over the place. So let's like focus on getting your arms in control, like these little things
Yeah.
that if sure, we could have an athlete come in, we could run them all over the turf and wear them out and send them home sweaty and hot. But like you're still pronating and your knees are coming in. We have a lot of kids whose knees come in on the spot. We got to fix that first before we start adding a barbell.
That's right.
Can you imagine? So that's really big for us, foundation. And, I know you've talked about that with physical therapy, with saying, if you're not sleeping well and eating well and taking care of yourself at a foundational level, all the hypervolts and recovery tools in the world are not going to help you. That's secondary.
Yeah.
So, and we are the same way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That stuff is there and it's useful. But you've got to master the basics first, because you can't massage out your way out of like a terrible lifestyle or getting 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep a night. You're not going to make up for that through supplements and through saunas and ice baths and all this stuff. It's just not possible. That's not how the human body is designed.
And definitely not optimal for sure.
Yeah, definitely not optimal.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you are working with athletes at elite speed, you just mentioned like people squatting and their knees are caving in and type of things. And you probably shouldn't load them up with a barbell until you make sure their form and their technique is good. What are some of the things that you end up seeing the most that you guys try to like correct and improve in these youth athletes' movement patterns?
That's a good question. So just the other day we do a free performance assessments for athletes. So that they come in, we watch them run and move and squat and do all the things, and then we look at them, take videos and all that. And there was a young lacrosse player, a boy, 13-year-old boy, and his running start position was so hunched over.
Yeah.
And that's so common because, like we talked about earlier, with kids and people on their phones, you probably see that in physical therapy.
Oh, yeah.
We are looking down all the time. So kids are
I've been guilty of that.
Yeah. Yes, me too. So we see that a lot. So we correcting that, start that posture, right? Getting them to stand up straight, chest tall, chest out, arms tight, keeping everything. And we do see very weak posterior chain.
Yeah.
That is very common. So we train a lot posterior chain, glutes, tons of hamstrings for athletes, even calves. We do a lot of exercises, 3-way calf raises, in, out of those. That doesn't look like much, but it is it's improving or helping reduce knee injury. So all of those things. So I would say yes, posture, keeping them, really, really body control tight. Yeah, now I'm like,
as I sit up straight. That's right.
So they're not hunched over, and then good forward acceleration. Some kids are laying back, and then posterior chain, really training that posterior chain. So those are, but we do, like you said, life strength, right? Like squatting, deadlifting, push, pull, carry, squat, hinge. That's right? That's, if you don't know what to work out, like you said, go in there and focus on those movements.
Yeah, some of my favorite things. Check out the Code to Strength Training episode. That's exactly what Kristin's talking about. Just do the things that you have to do in life and do it with weight and do it consistently. And you typically will see that improve, and you'll see that carry over to your performance outside the gym or wherever you're training. That posterior chain stuff that you said it's kind of like a hot topic or a sexy term out there. Mm-hmm. You got to train the posterior chain. But what I see happen so often, what I like is that you said is that you guys do an assessment, and then whatever that assessment shows, that's the stuff that you help the athlete address. Is because I see so much of, whether it's on social media or whether it's in a clinic or something, where people just get given certain things to do because of what they say is bothering them without even like an assessment. Like I heard this from a functional medicine provider recently. She's having like arm pain and elbow pain, and she's one of my clients. And she said she had gone to physical therapy before, and they basically just gave her some basic rotator cuff exercises to do without like a real thorough, like, why are you having this pain in the first place? Right. So that we can figure out how to help you address it. They were just like, oh yeah, your shoulder's weak, here, do these and they'll get better. Right. And she's like, well, it didn't get better. And that's why she ended up seeking out treatment in our office. But I was working with a student athlete who's like probably very similar to the types that you work with regularly yesterday in the clinic. She's 13, I believe, in middle school, plays soccer. And she came into our office with ankle pain. Mm-hmm. So she comes in, she had played, I think it was on a Friday or a Saturday. I think it was a Saturday. She played a soccer game. And then through driving home for that game, her ankle is like starting to really bother her, but she played fine. She didn't remember like, rolling it or spraining it or doing anything like that. But after the game, she's having like all this pain. So the next day, her father reached out to me like, Andrew, she's having ankle pain. They just got back from like urgent care or the emergency room or something.
Yeah. Wow.
And they basically just said, they did an x-ray, came back negative. They basically put her on a pair of crutches and said, you need to stay off of your ankle, this and that. And so I think it was maybe Monday, like we were able to work her into the schedule in the clinic, got her in. And it seemed like she was having like peroneal tendonitis type of symptoms, the tendons that go down on the outside of her ankle that had gotten irritated probably in her game. Maybe she would have like slightly rolled it, but she didn't have any like swelling or anything like that. But through an assessment, what I pretty much ended up telling her and her father is, your pain is at your ankle and we need to strengthen your ankle, but your hip is really, I think, where the issue is coming from, right? Your hip is weak on this one side compared to the other. This particular girl, she has a lot of mobility, like she moves really well. She has, even as a 13-year-old, she has like very visibly strong and defined quad muscles, but along the posterior chain relative to her anterior chain, she's weak. She's weak, right? And especially on that left side that she's having the pain. So, her ankle pain went away super fast. We had talked about ankle braces and things, but, I sort of really told her dad, like, I think we need to train further up the chain to get this to go away, address the hip, prevent you from having knee injuries, because of course, ankle injuries are bad, but I don't want her to, tear her ACL or something. It's very common in female soccer. So anyways, we're just addressing the things that we found in our assessment. But so often, I think if she would have gone to another place that didn't have the time to do this really thorough assessment, she probably would have just gotten given some basic ankle exercises. Here, use this band, do these calf stretches. And that probably would have helped her symptoms, but it wouldn't have addressed the issue that she's actually having, because her ankle, quite frankly, moves pretty well. It's actually decently strong. And I think she's just feeling symptoms that are because of a lacking dysfunction somewhere else. Right.
So really unpeeling the onion to like the core. No, we do a lot of glute bridge for our athletes. They hate it, right? It's boring. They're like on their back and they just like, but that is such an important foundational movement for them to get strong and just get strong in the glutes and hamstrings. So because similarly, I think a lot of athletes are weak in their hips and glutes. So
I think so many people, whether you're an athlete or not, the chances are you're probably weak in your glutes, in your hips. Hip flexors are often weak. So many people feel tight, or they feel like they need to stretch their hip flexors. They probably need to strengthen them. We spend so much time, whether it's in cars, sitting in traffic, or commuting to your place of work, or in school, sitting down either in person or Zoom. We're sitting in chairs right now. That's not an optimal position for function for our hips, for us to be upright and moving and propelling ourselves around. This seated position really is something that we need to train out of and train away from.
That's a really good point. That's another thing you asked what we, focus on. And that's another thing is kids are sitting. Well, we all are sitting a lot, so that is so shortened the hip flexors. So getting them when they come to training, like we run them through almost the same warm up every single time for a few reasons. One, it's very effective. We're specifically targeting those areas that they've been sitting all day or hunched over or whatnot. And also because we want them to learn how to warm up so that when they're on the field or the court at a tournament, they are like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I do this 5-minute warm up that I've done a million times over at elite speed. This is my warm up. And it's like innate, right? Like they know how to do it and they take ownership of that. So we run them through a warm up that really helps with that sitting position.
Yeah. And let's dive into that just a little bit for the people that are listening to this, about like what components make up a good warm-up program. Because you had mentioned, like when you were growing up, it was like, oh, let me do these static quad stretches and then go out there. You did your like mile run around the field and okay, static quad stretch, now go try to play
and sprint.
But that's not what we would advocate for a nice thorough warm-up now. So like what types of things would you tell someone are like components of a proper warm-up program to do before their activity?
That's a great question. So we are really big on like a dynamic warm up, right? So where we are moving, our joint is moving through a full range of motion while we're getting our heart rate up. And really the important thing is getting blood flow through the body. So getting your blood flowing, that's what's going to help you, perform and into the movements that you're going to be doing. So we kind of start with a dynamic warm up, leg raises. I'm getting that hip flexor moving. You're really engaging the quad, and we're very specific and detailed about like doing it right, not just like getting sloppy about it, but like teaching them how to do it properly. And taking paying attention to those details. So a dynamic warm up, like some we do a lot of like open hip mountain climber, things like that really get those hips open. We do glute bridge warm up. We do like a lateral lunge rotations, moving in a rotationally multi-directional. We do high kicks to kind of get those hamstring scoops. So while they're walking, like a good walking warm up is good. Soccer players can do that on the field before their games. Walk from 10 yards. That's all you need, 10 yards. Walk, hamstring scoops, high kicks, quad pulls while you're reaching, kind of moving things while you're warming up. So is that how you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that answer is great. And you still sort of see sometimes the, like in a big group setting, usually this like static holding positions, which for anyone listening to this, what the research would show, what injury, prevention research and everything would show, what most coaches and physical therapists or anything like that is going to advocate for minimizing the amount of static, like holding of stretches that you do for a warm up or a preparatory thing for your activity. You want to do dynamic things, like Kristin just said, things where you are moving through ranges of motion with control, not just like flailing your legs around.
Right.
And all the things that she just said, like getting your heart rate up, trying to promote some blood flow to warm up the tissues and warm up the body, dynamically move and simulate the types of activities that you're going to be doing, right? Like your activity or your warm up, should be like somewhat what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate or geared towards what training you're about to do. Like like out here in the gym, I'm going to be doing a workout today that involves like deadlifts and lower body and posterior chain, like we were just talking about, driven activities. My warm up for today is probably going to look a little different than my warm up did on Wednesday, where I did bench press and chin ups and more of an upper body based workout. My warm up will look just a little bit different. Right. And I'm sure you guys do the same thing. And then, one other thing that I like to throw into warm ups is some form of like a core or a trunk musculature, like bracing and breathing practice, because we want people to have their core and their midsection musculature engaged and involved in whatever the activities that you're doing.
Right. That's so important.
Yeah. One thing that I always remember seeing people do in the gym, and I used to be one of these people, is, you would go through a little warm up, you do your workout, and then at the end you'd like lay down on a mat and do a bunch of ab exercises.
Time for 5-minute abs.
Right? And I like to do that totally the other way around now. I don't even very often ever do like ab exercises that much anymore. I just like to get my core active and recruited at the beginning of my workout so that I make sure I am utilizing those muscles during my training. Then I might do some like isolated, training for my abdominals or my stabilizers of my spine, but not nearly as much as I used to do.
For sure.
And I feel stronger now than I did then. And I don't even do that stuff.
No, that's a really good point. And warming that up or getting those engaged and muscle activation. That's what I'm trying to say. So muscle activation is huge. So we do like the bird dog and then the dead bug type of thing, like getting them to really learn how to brace. You have to teach that. But then I agree with you. I think when you're squatting, if you're bracing properly, you are getting a core workout.
Totally.
I always tell my people that when I do a live workout with my team once a week, and I'm like, I promise you, if you're contracting your core and learning how to do that, and you have to, practice that while you're deadlifting, you're going to build core muscles, and I always point out that like having a strong core is different than having a six pack. Like we're talking functional strength, like where you're training your back and you're, where you don't reach behind to like grab something from the back seat and you tweak your back because you're strong, anyway, there's a difference between that aesthetically and between having a strong core and being sports performance. We're about being strong for performing.
Absolutely. How often, people, sometimes you'll see a picture or a video maybe of someone who has like a really defined core, like a really defined six pack or whatever, like take like a high level CrossFit athlete, right? Who's performing really highly at like the CrossFit games. How often do you see these guys or ladies like down on the floor doing crunches?
Yeah.
Right? That's not what they do in their training, and they still have that.
They're doing snatches.
Yeah, they're doing like full functional type of movements.
Yeah.
And
sure.
you know, and on that six pack piece anyways, like six pack muscles are not just made in the gym, right? Like if you want to aesthetically have that definition, there are a lot of other things that go into it, right? You have to have your body fat percentage be particularly low in order to really be defined and see that. And there's so much in your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, and your training, like all that stuff that goes into that. It's not just what you do. It's not just,
it's a lot of nutrition.
Yeah. So much. Yeah. We always used to say, you know, six packs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym.
So true. It's so true. 100%. So yeah. So really training that core for sure is very, very important.
Yeah.
So we focus on that as well. And then, you know, moving into like kind of the foundation of movement, really good warm up. And then, you know, we go into speed, acceleration, change of direction, injury prevention, and then sport specific exercises. So, you know, arm stuff for volleyball players, overhead for baseball players, you know, getting them strong, you know, a foundational strength in their squats and deadlifts and all of that. We do a lot of RDLs. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of that's how we train. Yeah.
I like it.
And then having them enjoy it, get results. And then really the big thing for us is like a community, having a community. I love this part. We have college athletes. We even sometimes have professional athletes that come and train at the facility. And then we have a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Like they're all in the same community.
That's awesome.
And like that mentorship, like not only like trainer to trainer and trainer to athlete, but athlete to athlete is a really special place to be. I would have loved to have that access to that other sports. Like it's good to get out of your own sport.
Yeah.
Be around lacrosse players when you're a soccer player, and you know, high school seniors when you're a middle school 13-year-old. It's like, oh my gosh, one day I want to do that. So I love that part of the community. Yeah.
And you know, the amount of benefit that there is to that is so hard to quantify, but it's phenomenal, right? Like having that community, and when you have that, it provides you an amazing support system, right? So, and that's kind of where I want to like steer this conversation a little bit of, you know, in my life and many people that I have the opportunity to work with, and in your life, you know, when we're playing sports and we're trying to perform and we're training, unfortunately, it's inevitable that at some point there's probably going to be an injury that either you sustain or someone that you know sustains. And when you have that like support system around you to be able to like work through that and deal with that, it's so much easier, and you're just feeling like alone in that.
For sure. No, I think the community piece is really important too, as far as, you know, people always ask like, how do I become disciplined? And that's a question you get all the time. And it's like, put yourself in a disciplined environment. Same with athletes. Like if you want to become a better athlete, surround yourself with really great athletes. It's, you know, the whole, you become, you know, who you're surrounded by. And that is, these kids are working hard towards goals, like playing in college or even just making the varsity team, you know, in high school. And when you surround yourself with others with similar goals and discipline and the same lifestyle, then you're going to continue to grow. So that's a big piece of it.
That's 100% true. Your environment is so strongly tied to like how you perform, how you act, what you do, decisions you make, and all that. Well, so if you're catching this episode with Kristin on audio, you of course can't see this. On video, you might be able to see this, but Kristin, you've gone through a somewhat recent injury and are going through a rehab process yourself. And we just started talking about like, you know, having an injury, having a support system. And I would love to know, as someone who's had injuries myself and had, you know, multiple orthopedic surgeries and things, I definitely feel like that gives me a perspective or changes how I communicate with clients, because in some respects I've been in their shoes, right? You know, it might've been a different surgery or a different injury, or we have different life situations, but I've gone through the process myself. And now you're going through the process yourself. You had mentioned you broke your foot a few minutes back, but how has like this process of you having an ACL injury, you know, sort of like changed the way that you communicate with people that you're working with, or are able to like relate to them? could you like walk us through that just a little
Sure.
bit?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I started working with Elite Speed, I remember asking one of the trainers, like, I know you guys work with a lot of post-injury athletes, like getting them back to playing their sport after they're finished with their physical therapy. I felt like, oh, I don't know, like that feels intimidating to me. Like, I don't want them to get re-injured and I don't really have the skills for that yet. Really they were saying, you know, we train strength, like we don't avoid these, like we don't avoid these exercises, we get stronger. Like we're going to like walk into this and like get them stronger, not just like say, well, I guess you probably shouldn't do CrossFit anymore for James, or you shouldn't play bait, or you shouldn't ski anymore. But like, let's get stronger, and so that we can do that. And I know that's a big thing for you guys. So that being said, I remember when I got injured, I was like, well, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind, to go through this so that I could gain the skills to coach somebody as a post-injury, but here I am. So you know, when I got this injury, like it was a very humbling experience. Like injuries happen, like we can do all we can to be strong and do all the recovery and do the right things. And they still happen because we're active, and like, it just is part of life, unless you're sitting on the couch.
Right. I mean, it's just like anything else, right? Like accidents happen. You could be like the best driver in the world and you'd be really safe, and you may find yourself in a car accident, and it's like a situation that, like, you know, you can't prevent everything, unfortunately.
Yes.
So yeah, you're totally right.
So I spent the first, you know, week or so feeling sorry for myself and thinking, what a fluke. Like, this was such a fluke. I just fell. I'm a good skier. I'm very, very confident on the slopes. And then you know, this moment happened where I was like, I changed my mindset from being, this happened to me, like, to saying like, this happened for me. Like, I have to use this. Like, I have to use this as a tool, like another tool in my tool belt, so to speak, to move forward and walk the talk. Say, like, I've always telling you, like, you know, overcome your, you know, adversity, and that, don't let that thing take you down. And here I am, like, am I going to be able to do that? And so leading by example, by saying, I'm going to have to take this by the horns and put the work in. It's going to be freaking hard, but it's going to be worth it. And then I'm just like learning every little bit about this ACL journey. I interviewed James. I'm trying to take it all in so that I can help people with it. And that is giving me purpose and courage through it. Is having that, like, and that goal, that's kind of long-term strategy, is like, I'm just taking this as part of my story, which I would really rather not have. Like, sure, this is not easy, but I'm using it to, you know, help others and become a better trainer. Honestly, we have a lot of kids who I walk into the facility, and there's like a 16-year-old in a brace. I'm like, ACL, meniscus, you know, we do this. This happens. Kids get knee injuries. So
you get knee injuries are really common, and you know, so often, depending on like what the type of knee injury is, we end up telling people a lot, like, when it's one of these overuse type of injuries, often knee pain is not stemming from the knee. It's often stemming from like the root cause, something else, like a, you know, lack of ankle range of motion or hip stability or mobility or whatever. But, you know, in a case like this, there's trauma directly to the knee, right? You're skiing, you tear your ACL, and injuries bond people together. You know, I've seen that with my own story in the clinic, and I don't even know if I've shared this on this podcast or not, but sometimes I'll have an adult here in the office who maybe has had like a hip surgery or something. And, you know, and then I share with them, you know, like, I've had 4 hip surgeries, and I've had an ankle surgery. And, you know, my story potentially could have been prevented if I would have known some of the things that I know now, but I'll bore you the details, or spare you the details. But, you know, it just like helps me create a little bit of a connection with that person, because they look at me and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that you had hip surgery. You're like, you know, like, you're 30 or 31 years old. They're like, wow, what did you have hip surgery from? And then it just like, I don't know, I share that little piece of information with them, and then we turn the story back to them, because it's, you know, it's their time, not mine, but just to like connect with them a little bit better. Cause like you said, it's relational. It's not just like a transactional type of thing. But yeah, you're able to create bonds with people through like shared experiences or shared suffering.
No, that's a good point. And I would say that there a lot of you know, just through this coaching experience, I run into people a lot who are like, oh, I used to be this, I used to do CrossFit, I used to run marathons, and then they had the thing, I always call it like that one thing, right? it was an injury, it was a surgery, it was COVID, it was a divorce, it was a something, right?
Yep.
And that thing like derailed them, right? And like a lot of times it's having kids, you know, people are like, well, I was really in shape before I had kids.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that.
yeah. And a lot of people think that like, once you turn 40, well, it's just downhill from there. Like, I'll never perform well again. I probably shouldn't be running. Like people say, like, it's hard on your joints. And like, I think, no, like it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can go through those things and turn it around. And even James said this when I talked to him about it, is like, he became more fit than ever after his ACL.
Yep.
And I know that's not everybody's story, but like, you don't have to let that one thing take you down, you know? And especially, I especially hear this a lot, you know, at this like 40 years old, is that like, I think people always assume that like your best physical, mental, even career, occupation, whatever is behind.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. Like, I think that's a lie we believe, but we, okay, sure, we have to work a little harder, but it's worth it. Like it's worth it to overcome that. Like you're worth it to not let that one thing take you down, you know? So that was, you know, with the injury, I was like, God, I got a couple ways I can deal with this, you know. Either I'm like, well, you know, and there were some people that were like, you know, you don't have to have surgery. You could just, you know, rehab it and not ski and not run and that's not who I am. Yeah. I'm not going to just take that road because it's easier.
Yep.
So
yeah, you're totally right. Well, of course you're preaching to the choir here with me. I've had a lot of those same directives, if you will, like same things told to me when I was having like hip surgeries and stuff. So often someone goes, whether it's to the physician's office, the doctor or whatever, and they're like, oh, my shoulder hurts when I do this. And they're told, well, just, you know, if you just avoid that, then it won't hurt. And that is absolutely not the way that you deal with things. Just like, you know, dealing with conflict with another person, the way to deal with it is not to just like, oh, sweep it under the rug or go gossip with your friends or your coworkers and talk about people behind their back. Like the way to handle it is through it and, you know, deal with the conflict.
It's hard.
It's harder, right? It is harder to, in the case of like my hip surgeries and stuff, you know, I was told, well, maybe you should stop heavy squatting or squatting as deeply or whatever. And currently I am closing in, hopefully, on like trying to get back to what my squat PR was when I was 19 or 20 years old in college. I've been able to, you know, deadlift PRs that are heavier than I've ever done before, just like you said with James. And I have no doubt that, you know, you'll have a similar story of like through the training and through the hustle and the grind and the hard work, like get back to and potentially surpass like fitness levels that you were at before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, it's important to remember that like a lot of people see James like with the, you know, what his recent, you know, CrossFit games and all that, but they didn't see like all the little things. And like every morning, like people are like, wow, you're walking and doing so well, and you look, and like I wake up every day and I have to like it's like concrete in my knee, and I have to like massage it, and it's not comfortable, and I have to, and it starts there. And wow, your range of motion is so good after 2 weeks. It's because I focused all my effort on getting the inflammation and pain down immediately. Because with swelling, I can't get range of motion. Yeah. So you got to start there. So what do we need to do? Like, it's just about dialing it into those details, right? Yeah. Like, get the kneecap moving, then get the inflammation down. Okay, now we can move the knee. You literally can't squat if you can't move your knee. Right. Okay, so let's move the knee. Now we can squat. Okay, you can't run without walking. I work on walking all the time. Yeah. Like walk. I literally pace walk backwards, forwards. And people see that ultimate thing. They're like, wow, oh my gosh, you did that thing. And I want to be like, you didn't see all those little things I did. Yeah. That like, it was monotonous. Like, I do not want to sit there and rub my knee every morning, but I do it because I know it'll get me where I want to go. Yeah. So.
And that just goes back to that, like, I know one of the things, like you keep mentioning James, who had his own knee story, knee injury and recovery story. One of the things that drives him is wanting to set the example for his clients. Like, he wants to live in such a way that he is walking the walk, and, you know, not just talking it. And I know you're the same way. And that's basically like exactly what you're talking about. Like, I've got to put in the work, but people don't always see that stuff.
Yeah. The little details. Yeah, for sure. And that's a big thing for me with just being a mom. And, you know, I'm 43, and a lot of people think like at 40, that's when or after I have kids, like that's just the end of my physical peak. Like I can't be optimal health or anything. You know, like it's normal to have headaches and be extremely fatigued and all of these things. It doesn't have to be normal. Just like you say, pain doesn't have to be normal. You don't have to live with pain. You can become, like, it takes work. Sure. You got to step into that process and get after it, but it's possible. And I feel like that's one of my missions, to be that person that's leading that example in, you know, for other moms who have had kids. Like, I know it's hard to come back from that, you know? So, and also like, as we get older, like our joints don't move as well, but we can help them move better. Like we can do things to be better. So.
Absolutely. One little piece at a time, like one day after another, just keep stacking those like little wins back to back to back, and have a, you know, snowball effect or a domino effect in a positive way to like just keep moving the needle. Yes, forward. Like
what does James Clear in Atomic Habits says, the aggregation of marginal gains. That I'm literally living that right now. I'm like, if I can get 1% more range of motion, that's okay. Yeah, that's today. Tomorrow, 1% more, and all that adds up to like you're running again and sprinting.
Great book, Atomic Habits. If you have not read it, go read it or listen to it. And you put some of those little action steps into place. Definitely very helpful.
Yeah. Great book.
Well, this has been awesome. And it's great that I have my schedule laid out today, that as we wrap up this conversation, I have a workout planned, because I'm like really motivated to go out there and do it right now.
You got your post your chain.
That's right. After talking to you. But Kristin, I've asked this question a few times to other people, and to put you on the spot just a little bit. Like the title of this show is called The Code, right? A Guide to Health and Human Performance. So of growing up as an athlete, you know, working through your own fitness journey, injuries, like all this stuff, being a parent, what would you tell someone, like, is like kind of like your summary of like, what is your key point, or like, what's your code in guiding someone to health and wellness? Like, what are like your key areas of like, this is what you should do to optimize your health and human performance?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. So I would say, and actually one of the managing partner at Elite Speed just asked me the other day, he's like, how do you stay, you know, motivated and in shape, like continuous through your life? And I was like, gosh, you know, we were talking to a professional golfer that was there, had a horrible, really, really hard loss. And, you know, I thought about it and I was like, you know what, you have to use your losses and your failures, like to your advantage. Yeah. And that, I think I would dial it down to that. Like, I will never forget and maybe you have these too, the really devastating losses.
Oh, I remember so many.
Oh, yeah. I remember sobbing outside of the Denver Tennis Club after I lost the state championship. And I played horrible. Everything just went, like, I will never forget that, because it hurt, it stung. But like, if you decide to use that, like that fueled me, like to become better. Like I got out there the next day and I was like, I will never double fault on that match point again. That will never happen to me again. I'll never let that, if it's in my control, I practice. Oh my gosh, I hit 1 million serves that summer, because I was like, that will never happen again. So if you use your failures, and same with the, you know, the injuries, those losses and those failures, like they are going to come if you're living life, like they're going to happen. But using those to fuel you to become better. And then just trying to work on that every day.
No, I love that. That's a great summary. So everybody listen to this, go out there and do what I call fail forward. Yes. Right? Failures are going to happen. Yes. Injuries are going to happen. Like stuff is out of our control. We can't control every circumstance. And especially in the context of like sports and competition, you know, the other people that we're competing against, they're working hard too, and they're training hard too. And sometimes the breaks are going to go their way instead of our way. And, but if you just keep using those to move forward, that is awesome advice.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, as we work to like wrap this up, what I want to do is make sure that people know how they can get a hold of you if they want to like follow your story or get in contact with you or anything like that. So whether it's from an Elite Speed standpoint or from a Fit and Fuel standpoint, how can someone get in touch with you if they want to?
So I probably through Instagram, you know, my Instagram handle is Kristin Jones _22. I didn't have anything too creative at the time, I guess.
Where'd the 22 come from?
That's my birthday.
Okay, there you go.
So that's my Instagram. I also do have a website that has a little bit of everything, my coaching, the app I use for coaching, plus Elite Speed, a little bit of everything. So I have that. And then, you know, if you're an athlete in Colorado and you want to come to the facility, we do free performance assessments, and that is through Elite Speed's website. Come in, look at the facility, check it out. We'll run you through an assessment and see if that might be a good fit. So those are probably the 3 best ways.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's simple enough. You'll find out all that information in the show notes as well. So you can get in touch with Kristin if you would like to. To everybody that tuned in to listen to this episode of The Code, thank you so much for being here. Check out this episode on, all the different podcast platforms, on the internet, on our YouTube channel, wherever that might be. But we really appreciate you guys tuning in with Kristin Jones. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you guys next time on The Code. Thank you so much.